There was no Big Bang, black holes and even neutron stars do not exist, gravity is not needed, the sun is essentially a giant light bulb, powered by electricity from the outside from distant regions of the galaxy. And Jupiter gave birth to Venus.
Sounds like nonsense? Perhaps. It's interesting that I didn't just list a bunch of strange ideas from science deniers and mixed in a couple of crazy thoughts from conspiracy theorists. All these claims belong to the same theory, if you could call it that. And soon you will see what I mean.
I'm talking about the so-called electric universe theory. The main idea here is that the dominant force in the universe is electromagnetism, and more specifically electricity. And this is supposed to fundamentally change our understanding of the universe, its structure and evolution. It's an alternative cosmology that rejects many foundational ideas of modern science and replaces them with, well, a lot of things.
I occasionally delve into, let's say, alternative ideas, conspiracy theories, pseudoscience, and some questionable projects.
And this is one of those cases that, at first glance, might not seem as absurd as something like the flat Earth theory. Some of its basic ideas, this hypothesis, even draws from well-respected physicists, including Nobel laureates. It uses some actual scientific concepts, so it might convince some people, and some people confused by its scientific appearance may not recognize it as pseudoscience. Today we'll talk about the idea and proponents of the electric universe, who believe they figured out how the universe actually works, while all the scientists of the world are wrong and trapped in dogma.
Let's take a look at the conclusions they draw from the assumption that the universe is governed by electricity. And trust me, those conclusions are strange. Very strange. What's wrong with this whole story? How can we distinguish science from pseudoscience? And why what is they call mainstream science is not a cult? It's going to be interesting. I'm Andrei, and this is Cosmos Elementary.
Over the past 100 years or so, there has been a huge leap in our understanding of the universe. This understanding has fundamentally changed. Even our grandparents lived in the time when it was believed that we lived in a static universe, and when we thought that our galaxy was the entire universe. But since then, much has changed. The modern standard cosmological model describes the universe pretty well. Theories like general relativity make successful predictions and have been repeatedly tested and confirmed in experiments and observations. In general, we have a pretty good understanding of what's happening in the universe. However, are our modern theories perfect and absolutely complete? Well, of course not. There are still many unanswered questions, such as the nature of dark matter and dark energy. Also, although we're almost certain that black holes exist, there are still questions about them. Take the singularity, for example. And of course, the unification of general relativity and quantum mechanics, and so on.
So, and people see these open questions, and from there they can take one of two paths. The first is the path of science. To develop a theory that is testable and falsifiable, build a mathematical framework, make specific predictions using this theory, and then check whether they align with experiments and observations. Present the work for scrutiny by scientific community through publications in peer-reviewed scientific journals, and so on.
In scientific literature, you can find alternatives to black holes, dark matter, and even the Big Bang. By the way, I already made videos on each of these topics. But you can also take another route. Come up with your own revolutionary idea that explains everything in the universe. Call modern achievements in physics nonsense, claim mathematics is unnecessary, refuse to publish articles in prestigious journals because of alleged conspiracy of scientists, and instead create your own website and post hundreds of videos on your channel. And in the process, gather quite a few followers.
Guess what scenario we're talking about today? But alright, let's set aside the emotions for now, though it might be hard. Let's just take a look at what electric universe is all about and where it came from.
One of the favorite things of people who love alternative theories is to hate on Einstein, calling him a fraud and his theories nonsense. They really dislike general relativity. They talk about a conspiracy among scientists, create their own alternative versions of gravity, or even reject it, gravity, altogether. This attitude towards gravity is also at the core of the electric universe theory. It was inspired in part by the so-called plasma cosmology. At the origins of this model of the universe were Swedish physicist Hannes Alfvén, the founder of magnetohydrodynamics and a Nobel laureate in physics, and Oscar Klein. Proponents of the electric universe often refer to plasma cosmology, saying, "Look, a Nobel laureate said the same thing, but in reality, it's definitely not the same thing." On the surface, it might seem that both plasma cosmology and the electric universe are similar. We are made up of atoms, which consist of positively charged protons, neutrons, and negatively charged electrons. The number of protons equals to the number of electrons, and as a result, the atoms themselves are neutral. However, if these atoms are given energy, for example by heating them up, they can lose electrons and as a result acquire a charge and become ions. A mixture of freely moving ions and electrons is called plasma. It is affected by magnetic fields and can conduct electric current. In the universe, most of the ordinary matter exists in a plasma state. Stars are mainly composed of plasma. Also, plasma is in stellar winds, nebulae, and intergalactic space. This leads to the thought, what if on larger scales, during the formation of structures in the universe, galaxy clusters and galaxies themselves, electromagnetism, not gravity as it currently believed, dominates. After all, of the four fundamental interactions we know today, or as they are sometimes called the forces of nature, gravity is the weakest. Electromagnetism is much stronger. So why do we focus on gravity?
Well, the last question is more in the style of the supporters of the electric universe.
Alfvén and Klein did not deny gravity, they simply assigned it a less significant but still very important role. In their version, they actually placed a significant emphasis not only on the dynamics of plasma, but also on the fact that, in equal proportions, matter and antimatter still coexist. In the early version of their cosmology, the universe was called the matter galaxy, which was already vast and had a very low density. There was only one proton or antiproton per 100 cubic meters. The chances of a matter particle and an antimatter particle meeting were very low. Therefore, they did not annihilate. But due to gravity, the matter galaxy began to collapse. As the density increased, matter and antimatter started to annihilate, releasing energy. And this opposed gravity and the compression, ultimately leading to an expansion instead. As we can see, gravity played a significant role even in this idea. These two diagrams compare the Alfvén-Klein model with the Big Bang model. They start differently, but eventually both lead to the same state of an expanding universe. However, it is further discussed that plasma, both from matter and antimatter, formed huge filaments, and fragments of these filaments eventually became galaxies. In this model, the universe is eternal, has no beginning, and therefore there was no Big Bang. Alfvén and some other proponents of the idea did publish articles on plasma cosmology, and no one silenced them. The idea did not gain popularity because it made incorrect predictions that contradicted what we actually observe in the universe. It also couldn't adequately explain key aspects of the Big Bang theory, such as the cosmic microwave background radiation and its properties, the formation of light elements in the early universe, and so on. Today, very few scientific papers are published on this topic, and the overwhelming majority of scientists consider the plasma universe model to be incorrect. No one denies Alfvén's other achievements, but winning the Nobel Prize in Physics does not mean you're infallible.
But the supporters of the electric universe took some ideas from plasma cosmology and went further. Much further.
The two main figures here are David Talbot and Wallace Thornhill. They are the founders of this movement, the Thunderbolts Project, which promotes the ideas of the electric universe. These two are the main speakers, ideologists, and quote-unquote theorists. So who are they? Scientists working in the field of plasma physics? Cosmologists? Talbot received his education in the field of political science. And Thornhill was, well, he was an electrical engineer with a bachelor's degree in electronics and physics. A bachelor's.
Well, from what they said, it's clear. And what they say is a lot of strong stuff.
So far, there's nothing too crazy in what I've told you. Some ideas come from real respected scientists. Is there plasma in the universe? Plenty of it. Are there magnetic and electric fields? Of course. But that's before I start talking about some of the specific conclusions made by the proponents of the electric universe. It is quite difficult to cover all their ideas. Their channel has over 900 videos, many of which are over an hour long, but I will give a few examples.
And I also want to say right away, after all those ideas about how the universe works, there will be one more interesting twist.
The main idea here is the same. The primary role in the universe is not played by gravity, but by plasma dynamics and electromagnetism. Electric discharges throughout the universe cause all sorts of things. In the most extreme versions, gravity is completely denied. But let's say in the main version on the official Thunderbolts Project website, they state that electromagnetism does not completely replace gravity. Although in other places you can find their claims that gravity and other fundamental interactions are simply different manifestations of electromagnetism. For them, gravity works like a magnet. At the cosmological level, they have no dark matter or dark energy. There was no Big Bang, meaning the universe is eternal. Since there was no Big Bang, the universe is not expanding, therefore it's static. And just to remind you, the expansion of the universe is confirmed not only by observations, but also by the fact that without the expansion, various paradoxes would arise. For example, the Olbers's paradox. In a static, eternal universe, the night sky would be just as bright as during the day, because although stars farther away appear dimmer to us, at the same time there are more stars in the same part of the sky, and one would compensate for the other. Therefore, we should see the night sky lit up with lights. But we don't see this, and it's explained by the expansion of the universe, the finite speed of light, and the fact that the universe had a beginning. One of the main arguments in favor of the expansion of the universe is the observed redshift of galaxies. Light from objects that are moving away from us shifts to the red part of the spectrum due to the Doppler effect. This is measured and has been confirmed for decades. Proponents of the electric universe, however, argue that redshift is simply an indicator of the age of the galaxy, not its distance from us. Therefore, they claim that nothing is actually expanding. Now imagine, we have an observation. The light from galaxies shifts to the red part of the spectrum. It essentially reddens. It's hard to argue with this fact because we can literally see it. And now this observation needs to be explained somehow. The modern and widely accepted explanation, as I mentioned, is the Doppler effect and redshift. Again, this effect, including for light, is something we can measure and understand. But let's say for some reason you don't like this explanation.
For example, it contradicts what you tell at the expensive conferences and makes it harder to sell books and make money from your followers. Excuse me. In short, if for some reason you don't like the existing explanation, you can just randomly come up with your own. Like, this is the measure of galaxies' age and not the distance, and call it a day.
Your explanation, your theory, must have predictive power. That is, let's assume it's true. What then should we observe in the universe in this case? Next, we compare this with observations and see how well the theory aligns with reality. And it's great that we have an enormous collection of photographs of galaxies. Now look, galaxies, like everything else in the universe, change over time. They evolve. The evolution and changes in the appearance and structure of a galaxy can follow two main paths. A galaxy located in a region of the universe with fewer other galaxies might be relatively isolated and not interact with other galaxies. For example, a spiral galaxy may eventually use up all its gas for star formation and transform into a lenticular galaxy. Its color will change because massive blue stars with short lifespans will no longer form, and its structure will also change. The second path is through collisions and mergers of galaxies. A spiral galaxy, for instance, can become a lenticular galaxy or even an elliptical one. In general, by observing the vast number of galaxies in the universe, we can infer their stage of evolution and how developed they are based on their appearance, structure, and other characteristics. Now let's imagine that everything is exactly as the electric universe proponents claim, And redshift truly indicates not the distance to galaxies, but only their age. In one of their explanations, they claim that galaxies form with high redshift values, and over time, the redshift decreases. This means that galaxies with high redshift values should appear young and less developed. In reality, however, this is not necessarily the case. We observe fully developed galaxies with high redshift values, which according to their logic should not happen. They also justify their cosmology by pointing out that plasma effects in laboratories resemble cosmic phenomena. Okay. What proponents of the electric universe have taken further than Alvan is that they have started to describe in detail the structure, formation, and evolution of cosmic objects on smaller scales, individual stars, planets, and even comets. Let's take the Sun and stars in general. In my recent video, I talked in quite detail about how we know the structure of the Sun, what happens inside it, and so on. And according to the electric universe theory, all of this is incorrect. In their original version, the Sun is a clump of plasma, and as I mentioned in the introduction, the Sun's energy source is not inside it. The energy comes to it from the outside. It shines because powerful galactic electric discharges heat it up. Earlier, they even claimed that there are no nuclear fusion reactions occurring inside the Sun. And I won't even talk about our understanding of the conditions at the Sun's core, the pressure, the temperature that are created there, since they don't like gravity. It would be enough to say that during nuclear fusion reactions, neutrinos are produced. If there were no reactions, there would be no neutrinos either. And they do exist. We detect them, and in exactly the amounts that should be present during reactions in a star with the mass of the Sun. Then the electric universe proponents actually revised their model and started claiming that nuclear fusion reactions do occur, but not in the core, rather just beneath the surface. However, this doesn't really improve their situation. To create such temperature and pressure not deep inside the Sun, but just beneath its surface, you'd need electric currents coming to the Sun from the outside so powerful, it's hard to even imagine. But the thing is, we don't observe any such currents. Where are they? They could easily be detected with modern equipment, but they are not there. What's even more amusing is that nuclear fusion reactions release gamma radiation. Since this actually happens in the core, by the time these gamma photons reach the outer layers of the Sun, they lose most of their energy, which is why they don't fry us alive. If the reactions were occurring just below the surface, the Earth would constantly be exposed to gamma radiation, and life on Earth would be impossible. Also, according to them, all the stars are not, as they say, isolated islands, but are all connected by energy flows, and the entire universe functions as a single organism. They attribute almost an esoteric significance to this idea. And here's a little problem. In their version, plasma is in charge. They claim it conducts electricity and all that, but plasma is essentially not a source of energy. To turn regular neutral gas into plasma, you need to add energy to it. So where are these electric currents coming from? What exactly is the source of energy? At this point, they throw up their hands and say that this is one of the questions that cannot be answered.
Science!
By the way, since we've mentioned the mythical electric discharges powering the Sun, here comes perhaps one of my favorite claims from these guys. So, craters on the surface of bodies in the solar system. You thought they were formed by the impacts of asteroids and comets? Fools! In reality, all the craters are the result of powerful cosmic lightning strikes.
Let me just ask, where are these lightning bolts? How, when, from what do they form? Where are they now?
Although the solar system is much less chaotic now than it was in its early days, when most of the craters formed, how then asteroids, meteoroids, and comets still continue to fall on planets and moons, albeit much less frequently, and craters like this one on Mars continue to appear without any lightning? So why come up with a new, strange explanation for something we already have a good and confirmed explanation for? I'm not saying we have to immediately stop and not explore further, but this. And no, everything has to be tied to electricity. And that's not all. According to them, lightning doesn't just create craters, but also other geological features. For example, the giant canyons of Mariner valleys are also the result of massive cosmic electric discharge. In one of their videos where they discuss this, it starts to become clear that either they understand nothing at all, or they are intentionally misleading people knowing the kind of audience their ideas are aimed at. They show Mars and ask the question, why is that on Mars, a planet smaller than Earth, the mountains are higher and canyons are deeper? The planet is smaller.
That's what happens when you don't like gravity.
That's exactly why they are higher, because Mars is smaller. The gravity is weaker, so taller structures don't collapse under their own mass. In fact, the stronger the gravity at the surface, the smoother the landscape tends to be. Look at the neutron stars. Then they get outraged, claiming that water couldn't have formed the Mariner valleys, as the official version suggests. But the thing is, that's no longer the main theory. Erosion probably did play some role, but the process was much more complex. They also really love comets. They claim that comets aren't bodies made of ice and dust, but are entirely rocky fragments that were chipped off from planets by giant lightning strikes, of course. At the same time, they claim that comets carry an electric charge, and their tails appear due to the interaction of electric currents, not from heating by the sun. Needless to say, years of study, measurements of composition, images of comets, and data from spacecraft we've sent directly to comets debunk all of this and confirm the presence of ice, the absence of a charge, and so on. They have an interesting description of planet formation. For example, Venus supposedly broke off from Jupiter, and then somehow it moved to its current nearly circular orbit. And in general, Venus is just a giant comet. According to them, neutron stars and black holes don't exist. Instead, they have plasmoids, for example. This despite the fact that there is a wealth of independent evidence supporting the existence of both. I won't list them here, but I'll leave a link to the video where I've discussed this in more detail. There are lots of claims like this. Proponents of the electric universe theory argue that their theory is elegant, because one phenomenon supposedly explains a whole range of processes, phenomena, and objects in the universe. They claim it solves many problems in modern physics. The problem is that, in the end, they make a bunch of conclusions, each of which can be easily debunked. They don't align with reality, observations, or experiments. Do electromagnetic forces play a role in the universe? Absolutely. And it's worth noting that scientists don't ignore them. Magnetic fields are indeed important, existing on various scales from planetary systems to galaxies. However, the role that the electric universe proponents attribute to electric and magnetic fields cannot be played by them. This is partially because, although most ordinary matter is indeed in a plasma state, on larger scales the charge is neutralized on average. Gravity plays a role in the formation of structures and objects in galaxies. If gravity were just electromagnetism, why would Earth's gravitational pull affect a piece of wood and a magnet in the same way? Where are all these powerful currents throughout the universe that supposedly form galaxies and power stars? Where are the lightning strikes that are supposed to form craters? General relativity, the modern theory of gravity, has been repeatedly confirmed through both observations and experiments. The precession of Mercury's perihelion, the Eddington experiment during the solar eclipse, gravitational lensing, gravitational waves, and much more. Take even the well-known example of GPS. In the operation of satellites, the effects of both general and special relativity are taken into account, without which the system simply wouldn't work. Calculations of Newtonian mechanics and general relativity are used to successfully launch space probes.
And what technologies are successfully working based on what they call a more correct and fundamentally different model of electric universe? Well, none.
The Big Bang is a leading theory for a reason. There is a wealth of independent evidence supporting it, as I discussed in my video about alternatives to the Big Bang. Many of the questions that physics faced when plasma cosmology and later electric universe emerged have already been resolved. And when such new data emerges, supporters of the electric universe simply dismiss it. But that's not all. Remember, I mentioned the twist.
Everything I've mentioned so far could be called, well, if we were really generous, an incorrect hypothesis. Very incorrect. Until you learn about another interesting aspect of the electric universe, its connection to the ancients.
They have a lot of videos on their channel and articles on their website where they talk about how ancient people from different cultures around the world depicted strange symbols. These symbols supposedly resemble electrical discharges in plasma, and so on. And they claim that this means that the sky looked completely different thousands of years ago. They argue that there was immense electrical activity in space back then. Why would it though, if thousands of years is just a short moment compared to the age of the solar system? They argue that ancient drawings resembling plasma activity are evidence of such phenomena in the sky. The idea is that because ancient art looks like electric discharges, it must be depicting something real from the past. This is the part of the narrative they promote, often featured in long quote-unquote documentaries, similar to those found on, let's say, History Channel. So when you put this all together, it starts to not just seem suspicious, but essentially turns into typical pseudoscience. Along with the claims that they try to make to look scientific, they also pull in mythology, they even delve into the nature of consciousness and various forms of esotericism, and this is not all. It includes many other characteristics of typical pseudoscience. Yes, you've probably noticed that when I talk about publications about the electric universe, I refer to videos on their channel, articles on their website. Yes, the Thunderbolts Project is not very eager to interact with the scientific community. They refuse to publish their ideas in peer-reviewed scientific journals. Their quote-unquote theory lacks a mathematical framework. Thornhill has even stated that physics is not mathematics, but rather experiments and observations. In reality, both are necessary. A theory should be able to make specific numerical predictions based on calculations. Without those calculations, there's not much to talk about. They generally enjoy dismissing mathematics whenever they can. They consciously avoid publishing their works in scientific journals. They self-publish their books, but the thing is, criticism is an integral part of the scientific process. It is strange to expect progress while being in your small bubble without an external fresh perspective and the verification of your conclusions. And there are also typical claims of pseudoscientists about dogma and how mainstream science doesn't accept them. And it's not uncommon for a scientific paper to go through peer review, be published in a prestigious journal, and then face criticism from other scientists. A good example is the story with phosphine and potential signs of life on Venus. Sometimes, as a result, we end up gaining a better understanding of the process being studied. Sometimes errors are found in articles and they are retracted. No one silences anyone if they adhere to the basic principles of the scientific process. Scientific journals do publish even quite extraordinary ideas, such as theories about alien megastructures or the possibility that entire universes might exist inside black holes. These ideas are considered because they can be tested, explored, and critiqued within the framework of scientific methods. Not every scientific paper is quote-unquote conservative ideas stuck in dogma. But perhaps such people don't publish in scientific journals. Not because their work wouldn't pass peer review, but simply because they don't need to. Why use mathematics and calculations which would only push away ordinary people? But this way, it's easier to attract new followers who will watch videos, buy books, and attend conferences. For that, scientific papers are not necessary. So here, people without necessary qualifications make extraordinary claims about understanding how everything in the universe works, attempting to cover an enormous range of phenomena, while refusing to use basic scientific tools like mathematics, avoiding peer review process, accusing scientists of conspiracies and narrow-mindedness, and also profiting from what they do. All of this is a typical pseudoscience.
In one of the articles about the electric universe I read and used as a source, I came across an interesting quote. The electric universe is not wrong because it's pseudoscience. It's wrong because it's wrong.
It's easy to imagine how many people could be swayed by the fact that what they say might appear scientific to the unprepared. Not everyone critically assesses such claims. Some people simply lack the necessary knowledge. Those with a tendency for conspiratorial thinking are even more susceptible for such claims. And we can see that they do have followers. Perhaps this particular idea itself may not be inherently destructive. However, often such movements, masquerading as scientific, can become the first step toward deeper pseudoscience and conspiracy theories, which at some point can become truly dangerous.
Thanks for watching. Links to all of the sources are, as always, down below in the description, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Bye!